Everybody welcome. Come one, come all. Stream on into the stream. Come on in. It's a big deal, guys.
Water's warm.
The water is warm. Thank you, Adam. Maybe a dead period for some to rest on the laurels. Not here at Noles247.com. Because it is finally what you've been waiting for. The crown jewel of the offseason. That is right. That is Noles 24/7's 40 most important player list. I am Trey Rowland. I will be your host of this episode of this YouTube live presentation, this Noles 24/7 on the bench podcast. I'm here with some of my tightest bros in the game. I'm here with Kev Little. I'm here with Adam Brown. And I'm here with Brendan Sonnone. Guys, just how fired up for you for list season.
'Tis the season.
Okay, stop talking. I forgot I got to do ads. Hold on to that thought. Guys, this very special, excited episode that Brendan just talked all over me on. He wouldn't even let me get out the fact that you got to be sipping some Chattanooga whiskey while you're having this. Not while you're driving, not at work. Responsible time. Sip on that Chattanooga whiskey because it is the best craft distillery in the game. Their flavors are delicious. Their creativity is on point. It's luxurious. It makes you feel like a better person and you treat people around you better. They have a plethora of options for you. Craft, finished in fun barrels, the 111 proof. Brendan, that's the workhorse, dude. But it's the luxurious workhorse. It's the Clydesdale. It's the creme de la creme of whiskeys that you can shove in your face all the time and not break the bank. It is the best. Please, if you are not on Chattanooga whiskey, you're not as interesting as you could be. So get it. Feel good about yourself. Go to your local hooch purveyor. Go to sealbacks.com and get that sweet, sweet brown juice. And what do we always say on this podcast? When you're all liquored up on craft whiskey, sell your house or buy one. And do that with the Turner Group. Guys, go to the Turner Group. What is it? Becky? Is it Colin? Is it Amy?
How dare you, sir?
There's also the guy in Tallahassee. His name's like Jim. Oh, it's like Griff Realtor. Like, what's his name?
Griff Broker.
I can't even make that up. Like,
come on in,
real
Griff.
estate
Get in here.
Superhero. The Turner Group, guys. Florida, any part of Florida, the good parts, the bad parts, the great parts. The Turner Group will help you buy, sell, trade, whatever you can do with a house. They'll help you do it. You've got to reach out to them and tell them Noles 24/7 on the bench sent you. I think we've actually, Brendan, we've closed our first Noles 24/7 on the bench home situation with the Turner Group. Is that correct?
Yeah, first they sold to the Blosteins, so Zach's family there, and then they sold a home in Central Florida to another Zach. So yeah, we're on the board twice now, I guess, 2 Zachs.
Bold take, beardless Trey.
If your name is Zach, if your name is not Zach, if you want to buy or sell a beautiful house, go to the Turner Group. Like I said, we're exclusively dealing with Zachs, but they will take other people of other first names as well. Drink your whiskey, sell your house, Chattanooga, Turner Group. Brendan, let's talk about this list because this is kind of like your brainchild. This is your baby. And I feel like people still don't actually get what the hell it is. So explain to them the criteria of the 40 most important. And then I'll let Adam and Kev kind of talk about how they put their list together.
I do feel like this is the first year there's been the most understanding of what important it is.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
2024 started doing this in 2017. It was the year before, or the off season leading up to FSU playing Alabama. We remember how that went, and Jimbo's swan song, as it turns out. And so, anyways, our Alabama website was doing a 30 most important player list. And back then in 2017, we had these things at 24/7 Sports called bolts. All right. Instead of writing the story, we did a bolt, which was just a rapid fire, quick story. And they wanted us to do about 100 of those every single month. So at a certain point in June, you're looking to fill some content. So I saw our Alabama site doing that. I said, hey, do you mind? It was Charlie Potter at that point. I was like, can I do that? Do you mind if I lift that? He's like, no, go for it. So we started doing it, but I made it 40. And that got me through June.
And like Zeus, very impressive. Stealing ideas and just filling up the quota, baby. I love it.
There's other, people do lists all the time in the off season. I wanted it to be a little different with putting importance on it because I thought that was an interesting way to kind of view the team instead of just saying best and do like an overall ranking. I wanted to go ahead and try to like figure out how much value a certain player had to the team's success. And you can do that in all sorts of ways. We all are going to value different things a little differently. But that's kind of the ultimate task is like who playing well is going to be the most important to you being successful, or who, if they play poorly or get hurt, would really derail your season, those kind of things. That's kind of the exercise at hand.
Summed up very well.
And I like it, even though it became like a time-filling exercise in the summer. We're like 7 years going strong on it. I like it because it gets all the Noles 24/7 writers together. Everybody aggregates their opinions. There's disagreement. There's agreement in the group chat. I like it because it really gives you a good stock of the entirety of the roster. And as we've done this exercise over the years, the results have been much more positive and a lot harder to kind of quantify who the best is. So it gives you a good stock of what Florida State Mike Norvell has going into the season. Adam, for you, before we start to get to the actual raw data, when you think of important players, what is it? Positional importance? Does talent trump everything? How do you put your list together?
Yeah, I tend to go to the positions that I think are going to make the biggest impact on the season. So naturally, like pass rushers, quarterbacks, skill guys on offense. I know that's sacrilegious. Some people are going to shame me for not listing offensive linemen. I do also include offensive linemen quite high on my list. This year, I lean towards some linebackers, which was shocking for me because I don't typically feel like the linebacker position is an important one, but I found myself kind of gravitating that way because of various reasons that we'll get to as we go through these lists. Hey, I'm always gonna naturally start with positions that I feel like are the most important, and then I'm going to weigh that with like what I think a guy's talent level is and his ability to make an impact on the game, whether he can change the scoreboard, that kind of stuff. I try not to overthink it, but then I'm gonna tell you, like, me. As I got to like 25 this year, it was a serious brain melter. It was difficult. It was difficult to say, like, okay, I think this guy's above this guy, or this guy should be here and that guy down there. It was a challenge.
Kev, what about you? Right before we get to the data, you feel better? You feel a little bit more hesitant before you did this exercise about overall team talent? How you feeling about the Noles this year?
You know, I think that there's a lot of unproven depth, but a lot of talent there. You know, you're looking at a bunch of guys that have 4 stars by their name, guys that are talked highly of by the staff, guys who looked good in limited reps early on. You know, your Blake, your Quindarius, like all these kind of young guys coming up that have potential. That you're kind of putting in that 30 to 40 range, and you're like, well, I don't know how I feel about them right now, but like these are talented players. That last year you're like, I can't fit 40 people into this list,
right?
Because I don't have enough. This year you started getting in the 30s and 40s, like AB was talking about. It's like these are less known quantities, equally if not more high end. Like the ceiling of the talent is higher for a lot of these guys potentially than some of the guys you lost last year, but you don't know where they are or what they're going to be as of this year.
Right. And it's one of those things where you had like almost 40 known quantities. This year, you've got guys coming in, transfers that haven't had a bunch of playing time, a bunch of young guys that need to ascend, some veterans coming in. It's a very interesting mishmash. And I think you guys are going to see there was some wild variation on some of these dudes when we get to the numbers. So let's get into the numbers. We'll start with the honorable mentions because they didn't make the top 40. But once again, we took everybody's opinion. These 4 guys, Chris, Zach, Dane, the Finkster, Brett, we got all of us all together in a room. We shook everything out. Kev, bring up that beautiful Excel PowerPoint, which I'm sure people love looking at because they don't look at all the time at their desk. So we've got a nice little conglomeration of guys tied at the 45th spot. You've got kids like Landon Thomas, Jabril Rawls, Jacob Rizzi, the tackle transfer from Harvard, Edwin Joseph, which is an interesting one. That's a talented guy. Ashland Barker, Omar Graham, and Cam Davis. You got a mix of young guys. You got a mix of like second-year dudes that are talented. You got some guys that have seen the field, like Omar Graham and Ashland Barker. Brendan, that conglomeration of names, which one's the one that stands out to you the most?
I think the one with like the most like upside potentially, like someone we could look back at. There's like two here that I think you could end up feeling really silly with. One is like Cam Davis. If he ends up like back half of the season, supplanting some of the older running backs in the rotation, the FSU really, really likes Cam Davis. Super talented, true freshman. And that's a position that like does lend itself to being able to play early. But I think most of us had a hard time ranking the unproven true freshman as right now, probably like your RB5, but that'd be one. And then Jacob Rizzi is the other one. We haven't seen him in person. I know the staff likes him a lot. There's some malleability to his game. I think he can play center, could play tackle, guard. He could potentially do it all, but until you actually see him in person, it's hard to. But that's a guy who could very well crack your two deep. And given the way FSU likes to rotate its offensive linemen, a decent shot that Rizzi ends up being more of a top 30 kind of guy, but tough again to say without actually seeing him.
Right, absolutely. Who's going to be that glue swing lineman? I think and there's some other guys that I did make the top 40 list that I think we're going to talk about potentially filling that role. Kev, if you will move up to the other honorable mentions, that was the tie at 45. Let's move up. You've got some guys that just missed. The special teams guys. So, okay, we'll get there. 44, KJ Sampson, Jaylen Brown, 43, Keandre Jones at 42, which I thought was interesting. And then Alex Mastromano, no love for the punters. I did put him at 40 on mine. What do you guys think? Adam, who were you the highest on it? You were pretty high at KJ Sampson. You had him as your 33rd most important player on this group. Why do you think all of us are stupid and you're right?
I don't think anybody's stupid.
Embrace debate.
It's one of those deals where I feel like they like to rotate so many bodies at defensive tackle. They showed last year the numbers that they want to be able to run in and out through a course of a game. And we don't know. We think that Darrell Jackson's going to be a really good football player. And we know that there's a high ceiling there for Josh Farmer, but we don't know anything behind those two. So I'm just going to throw some numbers at the defensive tackle position and bank on one of these guys stepping up and being an important player and playing a bigger role this season. So that's why you're going to see I'm a little bullish on a lot of the defensive tackle group because I think they're all going to be needed.
And it could be like one of those deals. We know that they have a talented veteran, not talented, but a well-traveled veteran like a Grady Kelly that we think is going to be taking a lot of snaps at the first part of the year.
Yeah.
It's one of those deals where KJ Sampson could be taking those snaps at the end. So I think it's a good projection. Speaking of projections, Kev, Jaylen Brown at 22. Yeah, young, unproven, extremely talented. Got pretty good reviews coming out of spring, integrated a lot faster than people thought. Are you just betting on upside here? Or is it, hey, DJ's going to have to throw it to somebody? Why not Jaylen Brown? You have him as your 22nd highest, most important player on the team.
To give some context, the way I did this, I mapped out who I thought my starters were. So that was my first 22 players. And then,
so you have him as a starter now, like by the end of the year, like middle of the year. What are you thinking?
I was really between him and Ja'Kai Douglas for that starting slot position. And I just felt by season's end, Jaylen Brown would kind of be the guy to be your slot fade guy. Him and Ja'Kai are pretty similar, so I just kind of put him towards the end of my starting because I just kind of edged him out as that slot role as kind of my least important kind of starting position because I think ultimately he's going to be interchangeable with a few guys in there.
You could look like a genius by the end of the season. And once again, Alex Mastromano, one of the best punters in the country. We apologize. It's a special team slight.
Yeah, that's a fink issue.
You got finked, brother. You're on my list. You're on you're way up on Zach's list. Please. We'd love
I legit thought I was going to be the only one that ranked him. I was shocked when everybody else had ranked him. I'm like, no, these guys are not going to rank the punter. And I'm like,
He's
okay,
that
I'm going to look
good.
like the genius here. And then, wow, I wish I would have ranked him higher. I find it interesting that 4 of us didn't rank Landon Thomas at all, and 4 did. And Brendan, you're the only one that's been there and seen him go through practice that didn't rank him. Well, I mean, what's got Clay ranking him 28th overall?
He did finish the spring off well. I thought the last week or so of spring ball was by far his best week. So I think kind of that is some, I don't want to say recency bias, because a young player getting better is encouraging. But when we start talking about importance, I get the appeal because he's probably going to be your 3rd tight end by the end of the season. And the way FSU uses tight ends, that's going to be an important aspect of your offense, even if they do go with more 21 personnel than usual, or what they had in previous years. They run out of 12 personnel a ton, so that might be one of your top backups in a way. And when we talk about importance, kind of I think with Kev and Jaylen Brown, some of it's a projection of if this guy hits, then you might be better off than what you were expecting at a position. So I think that's kind of, I'm speaking for Clay there, but I do understand the appeal and the upside of a Landon Thomas because of how he finished the spring and because of the role he could potentially play as a true freshman. Be big if he does something.
Hold on, Trey, you're getting asked all the questions, and I want to ask you one. All right?
Oh man, okay, buddy.
All right.
Yeah.
You didn't rank Landon Thomas.
You
had him at 50. I did. Kev did, and Brendan did as well. What made you leave him off your list?
I do, honestly, a lot of that was a little bit of wish casting that we'd stop running so many multiple tight end sets. I want to spread it out and have multiple running backs. But I think that if I had an impressive pass catching tight end I think is going to be a run first offense this year. Mm-hmm. I think that he will get some opportunities near the end of the year. He could be one of the most important, that if he hits, he could really raise the ceiling of your offense. I just think that's a lot to put on a true freshman in this offense with what I think that they're going to do. And that's why I had him out of it. This is one of those deals where my rating talent diverges from how important I think he's going to be to the team's success this year, because I find him to be a very talented prospect, and that number is going to be different next year for sure for me.
Late,
as always.
Yeah, I just think tight ends, not as much as offensive linemen. You need an 18-year-old to kind of grow and develop his body before he's going to be usable as a tight end. Nothing against Landon Thomas, but very rarely are you seeing freshman tight ends make a big impact. I mean, the Taylor kid from, was it LSU? I think he's going to be a really good player. I think he's going to be a great tight end for you. I just don't think he's going to be physically mature enough to take on a tackle in a box or take on a defensive end in a box.
Totally agree. And they're going to want to pound the rock this year. Let's go up to number 40, the official start of the list. These are some good players that didn't even make the list. That was a hearty honorable mention. Let's talk about redshirt senior running back, 5'11", 215 pounds from my neck of the woods. Coco Tiger, Kaziah Holmes, the running back. He's our 40th most important player. I think the high, Kev, you had him at 23 is the highest. Brendan, you had him at 33. Adam, 35. I had him at 39. And then Dane didn't rank him. Chris didn't rank him. Zach didn't rank him. So it seems to be a little bit of consensus around the bottom end of the 30s. Kev, you're pretty high on him. I could see why. He gives you a nice look out of the backfield, and he had some flashes last year.
You can really tell based off this list who watched our post-game film review and who didn't. So we kind of gave him the king of the spring for the X's and Noles guys after a film review. At least I would say so.
He looked good. He looked really good.
He blocked really well out of two-back sets. I think they're going to use a lot of two-back sets. I think he's almost going to be like a third down back / fullback. I think his pass blocking is going to get him on the field a lot. I think he's got a unique skill set for the running back room that's frankly loaded. And because of that, I think he's going to see a lot of snaps. I think he's going to be instrumental to keeping DJ clean. I think he's going to be instrumental to breaking some outside zones. And I think he might get the rock a few times himself. So I'm big on Kaziah Holmes. I wasn't pre-spring, but I got really sold on him in the spring game. And to be honest, I think a lot of that stuck in my memory when I decided to rank him. And I think I don't know. I bought hard Kaziah after the spring game.
I like him as the tandem in pony packages. I like him as the other running back, just with how physical he is in the blocking game. And some of the looks, like him and Toafili teamed up, and him and maybe like a Jalen Lucas teamed up. I think that'd be good. I mean, Brendan, you've seen Kaziah Holmes for a long time now out of practice. Do you think that this could possibly be an ascendancy year for him, or is it just too many options for him to really stand out in that running back room this year?
Yeah, I think he's going to be. So what I like about Kaziah Holmes is he does everything well, right? Like the blocking Kev alluded to. He's proven to be a reliable receiver out of the backfield, fairly explosive at his size, powerful runner too. They liked him like last year going into the season. I think they were kind of viewing him as a potential like power down running back, and proved they could do like a lot of things well. I don't know if he's like great at any one thing. He's definitely gotten better year over year the last 2.5 seasons that he's been at Florida State. So like there's appeal to him. I think there's a like safety blanket type of element to what he does because he does so many things well. I like with Kev, I have a hard time picturing him. You put him at 23 years and he's pretty much your most important backup at that point. I'm not sure I feel quite that way with you have Roydell Williams, Lawrence Toafili, Jalen Lucas. So like you're talking about your potential RB4 in my view, but like still a guy who's going to probably have a pretty clear defined role in that third down package, maybe even power packages too.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see like the direct backup to Roydell Williams. Do they get both those guys on the field at the same time? Is he the third down back? What are they going to do? What's the running back distribution of handoffs going to even look like this year anyway? Lot of interesting things to ponder there. Let's ponder who the number 39 pick is. And the juice is loose. Justin Cryer, linebacker. He's a sophomore, 6'1", 232 pounds. Only 12 tackles in 13 games last year. Had a 61.4 PFF grade. This is an interesting one to me because you're trying to project this linebacker position. And Adam, I'll go to you. And a lot of this list to me for the linebacker position is like, who the hell is going to be the guy that's going to play next to DJ Lundy? Who's going to be Lundy's backup? What are the combinations going to be? How many of where does Justin Cryer fit in those combinations? To me, I had him at 32. Chris had him at 29. Kev didn't rank him at 42. Adam really didn't rank him at 50. Brendan, you had him at 31. I thought that he, to me, is going to be like DJ Lundy's backup. And I think that this is a kid, his ability to be at the right spot at the right time might make up for a little bit of some of the athletic intangibles that he doesn't have, like a kid like Blake Nicholson, but he's a steady hand. And with the type of defense they're going to play this year, I think that his value is only going to increase through the year. Adam, you disagree. You were very bullish on linebackers, but not this one. Why do you feel that way for the Juicer?
I mean, I already ranked like 4 of them, so I couldn't justify ranking a 5th or a 6th. And
why is he your 5th?
I would have ranked Omar Graham over him too. Frankly, I like Cryer. I didn't love what we saw from him when we broke down the spring showcase. I think he's got a future in this defense, and I'm sure he's going to play a role this year. I mean, you still went out and got Cam Riley, who maybe is going to be more of a sub package type of linebacker and have a specialty role. He's not ahead of DJ Lundy. I mean, they still talk really highly about Omar Graham. Like Nicholson was ascending as spring went on. Like, I mean, when we're talking about important, like how important of a role is he really going to have? Like to rank him above Kaziah Holmes, who could be an important piece in your pony packages as a running back, to rank him ahead of the best punter in the country.
It depends.
I couldn't find myself justifying ranking like the number 5 linebacker. And I'm not going to say, oh, well, he's going to be important on special teams. Like,
well, he's your number 5. That's the thing that's funny about these rankings. Somebody's LB3 is your LB5. You know what I'm saying? We don't know. So I think that makes sense. And there's a lot of because you got guys like Shawn. There's so much opportunity in that linebacker room.
Yeah.
Like if some of those
Shawn
guys
Murphy.
if some of those guys can hit the
He
way they need
legit
to,
might be
man,
my LB6. Like,
it's wild, dude, because it's deep, but it's still there's so many question marks there.
Yeah.
Interesting. Number 38. Oh, go ahead.
no, I think it encapsulates the rankings of this group that we're in there right now. There is a lot of give and take about where we think they're going to end up. Like upside versus steadiness versus like high floor versus potential ceiling. Like I just think this whole tier of players right here is shake them up, throw them in there, and see what the hell you get.
Yeah, everyone in like 43, I'm looking at it now, everyone 43 through 39 so far has had at least one person not rank them and at least one person put them in the 20s.
There's a lot of, and it's just because you're playing like pecking order Nostradamus. I don't know, like if he's like one of your first linebackers off the bench, then Justin Cryer gets eminently more important. If he's just a special teams dude, then he's just a special teams dude. That's the unknown aspect of this team, and I think you're going to see later on in the list some of the guys that we don't know, but they need to be good for this team to be successful. I think you're going to see that guys that necessarily are ranked higher than maybe their production allows for because the team needs them to be good. But we'll get there when we get there. 38. What's old is new again, is old again. He's back. He's fourth. He's two. He's Fro. That's Amarion. That's the Duke of Arrakis Cooper. Senior, back from his sabbatical over in Boulder. They got some fun stuff going out there. He primarily played like outside corner. We think he's going to be a safety here at Florida State. We broke down his film. I thought that he had a really tough job at Colorado at that defense. But man, he was physical. He got into people. I think this is a great play, especially with him coming back as a safety. The coaching staff was very happy to have him back. Probably not as happy as Kevin Little was to have him back. You got him at 18, my brother. You got him at 18. I am at 37. Brendan had him at a big fat 50. So let's have a little nerd battle royale between you two guys here. And Adam had him at 30. I had 37. Clay at 25. I do think he's going to be heavily in the mix of that safety spot in that rotation. And I think he'll get more playing time as the year goes on. But Kev, why is he so important to you? And then Brendan a retort. And you can make it spicy if you like. I'll allow it.
Ooh.
Yeah, so this goes back to how I graded them. Putting my 22 starters as the 22 most important players.
I get it.
So Duke Cooper was going to be their starting safety last year. He transferred out to Colorado to be a corner. The staff still wanted him, went out and got him to bring him back. I think they still want him to be their safety, and there's nothing from that I saw this spring that showed me that Conrad Hussey was ready to take the spot that I think should be his. So I projected him as the starter at safety, opposite Shaheem Brown. That put him in my top 22. And then you see him at 18 just because he's at the very back half of that starting 22. That's how he ended up there. Right or wrong, that was my logic.
Hey, staying on business, brother. Do you have the Duke as one of your starting safeties at like week 1 in Ireland, or do you think that he grows into that role? Kev?
Oh, sorry. I think
okay. It was a very,
Nope.
I know it was a very detailed question. I know.
And no one else has him as a starter.
Yeah, I was lost in the comments. No, I think it's. I mean, he has as much time as Devontae Brown at safety because they've both spent one spring there. I think he's more physically talented than Devontae Brown. I think that he's a guy with more experience kind of in this system. I think that there's a good chance he starts early or at least gets a lot of reps early. And I think he succeeds. And I think by year's end, he's playing a decent role in this defense. And that's what I'm projecting for him.
Brendan, why is Kevin wrong? Why is he wrong and ignorant?
So I don't know that Duke Cooper would have started at safety last year. He would have been your third. We may not have had to have the.
Oh yeah, Akeem Dent. Sorry, yeah, I forgot about.
But he was brought in to like basically your third safety, which the way Adam Fuller uses safeties, like he likes to get a third one in there quite a bit. And that ended up being Kevin Noles last year, and wasn't an experiment that was super fruitful, I guess would be a nice way of saying it. It's just funny to think about, like if Duke had stayed at Florida State and he wanted to, I think, go play cornerback again, and there was ties to people on staff at Colorado who he knew from high school days. So like, yeah, I get it, but he would have been probably your projected starter this season at safety. Now he's going to be battling with Devontae Brown, maybe with Conrad Hussey, seen how as Conrad develops where he goes. There's also a chance that Duke could also play nickel, which gives Kev a little bit more value as well. A guy who could potentially play two positions. I'm just not sold on him coming in and immediately like regaining the traction that he had from a year ago. I don't know that I see it that way. I think I had him like in the 50-ish range on my list, but obviously we stop at 45. So like, I think he's going to be a rotational guy for you. I think he brings value. I know they liked what they saw from Devontae Brown in the spring. Felt good with him at safety there. I have a hard time assuming that someone's going to transfer in after transferring out and be if we're saying he's in the top 20s for importance, that's making an assumption that he's going to be a starter or pretty darn close to it from the word go. And I just don't know if that's how I view it right now.
The physicality in his game is a plus. I'd like to see how he adapts to the run fits at safety. I think that'll be interesting, and that could get him on the field quicker. But the talent is there. We saw it in the film.
Yeah. To address something, Brendan, I think one big difference between how I viewed this versus how I think a lot of other people viewed it, I saw it by season's end, like cumulative value. And I think he's going to be there by the end versus someone like Devontae Brown, who probably starts at the beginning of the season as someone like who's currently been in the program.
Body of work, most importance. Okay, I get that. I get it, dude. If he's your top 22 by season's end, like I get the ranking. I get it.
I think it's important to note though that they didn't want Duke Cooper to leave last year. They wanted to keep him. He was highly regarded. He's highly regarded throughout the locker room. Like people, they do. There are a lot of folks that think very highly of him. Like I think that's important to note that. And he did have he has practice at safety, but he also does have that flexibility, like to be able to slide inside at nickel. He could play outside at corner if you were to get some injuries and some of your younger guys didn't develop the way you wanted them to. Like, I think there's a lot of role versatility there for him that he could step in. That's why I kind of found myself ranking him 30th, which I think is maybe a little better spot as opposed to not being high or too low.
Oh, your ranking's the best. Yeah, I understand.
I think so. I really do. I really do think so. Just because he's going to play a role. Like I don't think they would have taken him back if they didn't see a role for him. And
I'm really pleased with how all of these turned out, despite the variance in rankings. I think they kind of worked out.
In the aggregate.
Yeah, that is the beauty of the composite, right? Is that it does kind of even some things out, which is good.
Yeah.
All right. Let's even out this list and get to number 37. We're talking about linebacker Alabama transfer Shawn Murphy. He's redshirt sophomore, 6'2", 226. Completely almost statless at Alabama, only 2 tackles in 13 games, but a guy that has a lot of potential. Love breaking down his film. Zach had him at 31. Adam, you were the highest at 22. Brendan didn't have him ranked. I had him at 43 as well. Kev 26, Chris 34, and then Dane 50, Clay 45. Where do I want to go? I guess I'm going to start with you, Adam. You're aggressive on linebackers. Do you think that this guy is going to be one of your starters? I mean, you have him in your top 22. Do you think that right now he is your best bet to spend the most time next to DJ Lundy as his running mate as one of the starting linebackers?
Yeah, that's why I ranked him as aggressively as I did. I think he's the player who's going to play the most snaps next to DJ Lundy, and maybe that isn't as important as like 22, but I kind of just got to thinking to myself, like, I think he's got the potential to be an impact player and to make a difference there. So that's why I wanted to be a little more aggressive with that number. We'll see. Obviously, there was some bad taste left in everybody's mouth coming out of the spring showcase. He had the bad miss against LT in space, but there was a lot of chatter that he was dinged up through spring, and we know how difficult it is for players transferring in, especially from an entirely different defense at Alabama into Florida State. So I think that there's the potential for some traction to be gotten as summer went along, and for him to step in and kind of solidify himself in that role. He's the most talented player in that room, in my opinion.
Brendan, were you disappointed with what you saw from Shawn Murphy in the spring?
It was just inconsistent. Maybe alluded to him being hampered at times. I had him at 40, 47 on my list, so it's not super far off from where he actually landed. I think the spring showcase, with the opportunity to do live tackling was a little concerning. I think there's some people in the program who are a little concerned about that as well. I think FSU's actions, the fact they went and took Cam Riley in the transfer portal after kind of, passing on him initially, but then after getting a whole spring to evaluate the linebackers, one is that they had the room for it at that point based on some other transfer stuff and recruitments. But then secondly, I think if they had loved what Shawn Murphy did throughout the spring, then you're not probably adding a guy with some starting experience in the portal and allocating resources there. So I think it's kind of a combination of there's ups and downs. There were some really good moments, especially towards the end of the spring. But the last data point that we had wasn't super encouraging. And then some of the actions afterwards, I guess, to me indicate you're not convinced that Shawn Murphy's a starter for you or necessarily even a too deep guy for you right off the bat here.
I think so too. Yeah. What were you saying, Adam?
Well, I want to ask because you ranked Justin Cryer 31, which would kind of contradict the commentary there of Shawn Murphy. Doesn't the same apply for?
Well, one you went out in the portal to get as a potential starter, and the other's a second year guy. I think it's a little different, I guess. And I'm weighing some upside there too. I understand the point, AB. I think if Justin Cryer is a guy who I think what his role will be. I think he will most likely be the backup linebacker to DJ Lundy. Shawn Murphy has a lot of variance where he was brought in to be a starter. And again, I don't think the actions indicate that he lived up to that. So maybe I'm overly penalizing him for that. But yeah, I don't know if I left the spring as much as I wanted to, because I liked some of the stuff that we saw at Alabama. But I don't know if I left the spring saying, yep, that's definitely your guy there. And so maybe I'm penalizing him a little extra because of the expectations I had going into the spring and him not living up to it.
Yeah, I think in the end I was probably a little bit too aggressive with his ranking.
Oh, you, Mr.
No,
Mr.
I wish I would have
ranker, man.
I wish I maybe would have put him in the 30 range, but I do think he's going to play a lot, and I think that he's going to have an important role.
He's a guy that if Mr. Shannon can get his claws on him a little bit, develop him up, could be a nice little success story where a lot of us are wrong on him. He is one of those guys where I mentioned, if he hits, ceiling of the defense could go up. So there's some importance lying in there. Let's talk about a guy that we know is going to get some snaps, but I think that there was some disagreement on the impact of those snaps. And that's number 36, redshirt junior defensive tackle, Grady Kelly, the Colorado State transfer. He had 35 tackles last year, 6.5 tackles for loss, 72.2 PFF grade. So very respectable. I had him 34. Chris Nee had him 33. Dane 37. Adam 38. Brennan 37. Zach 28. So we're all kind of in the where his ranking ended up being. Kev, you said no. You said nah. Don't like it. Not a fan of his game. You actually texted us in the group chat berating us for our rankings of this player.
Yes, I think some people got called an idiot.
Some, all.
Respectfully. Now, I think now listen, this is kind of he's a steady hand. You know what you're going to get. This kid is going to play a lot of snaps. I think that he's going to be part of your second rotation. Kev, do you agree with that? Or do you disagree? What made you, where is your divergence on this player?
I had him as my 6th defensive tackle.
Okay. So I
had him solidly on my 3rd string.
Okay.
So that just put him out. I have, Jackson, Farmer, Lyons,
Samson,
even Durajaye, I think is going to pass him by the end of the year as someone who's going to be if you need someone in there for pass rushing downs, I think Durajai fits that mold and has way more top end ability than him. So, he might be someone that gives you some breathers for some guys in the first half of the season. I didn't think that was as important as these other people.
I think he's going to play, bro. I mean, Adam, what do you think? You've seen his game. Like, I agree with Kev on like the top end, like ceiling. But this is a kid with a 72 PFF grade. We saw some of the things he does well, some of the things he doesn't do well. But this is a guy that's amassed a lot of snaps in college. I do think that he is going to play. Now, how impactful those snaps are going to determine how much he's playing for the end of the year. Kev thinks not very much. All of us think that he's going to be kind of like a solid rotational piece. What do you think, Adam? What do you think? What are the pluses of Grady Kelly's game? Why'd they go out and get him?
I just think he's a guy that you're going to be able to depend on to give you the 350 snaps. They may not be elite 350 snaps, but this isn't the top 40 elite list. So I think you're going to be able to depend on the 350 snaps that you're going to get out of him over the course of the season. And I think that that's all they're really looking for, if even that many. Like, it could be 300 snaps. Like, this is a guy you're wanting to come in and fill the Malcolm Ray role. And I don't remember how many snaps Malcolm Ray had off the top of my head last year, but it is an important position for them. They want to be able to roll a lot of bodies at D tackle throughout the course of the game to keep guys fresh over the course of the season. I don't think, and I rank Daniel Lyons higher, I don't think you're at a position right now where you can say, I can count on Daniel Lyons to be the number 3 or number 4 defensive tackle throughout the course of the season. And then KJ Sampson, second-year player. Like, it's kind of what I was just saying with Brendan, like with the Cryer and Murphy thing. Like, KJ Sampson is a second-year player. There's upside there. But I don't know if you're looking at him necessarily saying, oh, I can guarantee 350 snaps out of him for this upcoming season. Grady Kelly, you just know what you're going to get. I think he's a high floor guy, not a high ceiling by any stretch of the imagination, and you can just rely on him for the 350 snaps to get decent production out of him.
Yeah, so I think part of how my grades look so different than a lot of other people's, part of what went into my grading was a thought of like replaceability. Like, if you were like, oh no, we've lost Grady Kelly, now KJ Sampson has to take those 350 snaps. Does your win projection change at all? No, not top 40.
But Kev, I push back on the defensive tackle depth is so
respectful pushback.
Yeah,
a very gentle pushback here, nudge, if you will. The defensive tackle depth is so shaky that there's one injury away from they wanted to rotate 6 defensive tackles last year. 7 if Darrell Jackson didn't get screwed over. Like, they were going to go with a deep rotation. You have 5.5 if you're counting right now. Like, in that, and so just by the way that FSU likes to rotate defensive tackles, they've kind of said this is what we want to do, right? Just by that alone, I think it kind of speaks to how important he can be, because if you lose him, that's 200 to 300 snaps just like that are gone just by proxy. If your defensive tackle depth isn't great, he's going to play because he's solid.
War be damned here. If Daniel Lyons doesn't take things seriously enough, he could easily be your number 5 or your number 6. If KJ Sampson doesn't take that next step of development, he could be your number 5 or number 6. And then if Grady Kelly gets hurt, who would potentially be your 3 or your 4 there, you might be up a creek without a paddle.
Ooh. I get it, and I think it's fascinating that Kev has finally lived long enough to become the villain against scrappy, lunch pail, pesky, high motor dudes. This is a guy who's got a full-size Kellen Moore fat head on his wall, and he's finally become the villain. He's become the 5-star aficionado villain, and it's quite a turn for people who've watched the channel the entire time. I, for one, am happy to see it because I love character arcs. Let's go to 35. Let's have this list arc a little bit. We're talking about tight end Jackson West, redshirt junior, believe it or not, 6'4", 242 glorious pounds. Let's see where the rankings are. Zach had him at 34. Coach AB 39, Brendan 38, Kev 37. There's a lot of consensus on this. Chris 36. I had him 45, 31, 33. Once again, I don't want to run that many multiple tight end
Trey
sets
needs
this
tight
year.
end.
I just want one tight end and other things on the field. I'm tainted from our film review last year. Brendan, what do you think about this? Guy that's been in the program for a long time. Where do you think he stands out? Am I a fool? And we're just going to be running as many multiple tight end sets as last year. So you're going to see a bunch of Jackson West.
No, they will be. They were 10th nationally in 12 personnel last year. So I don't think they'll be doing that quite as much this year. But I think Jackson West will have a role. You're still going to go with 12 personnel, right? Like that's still going to be a thing that Mike Norvell always does to some extent or another. And when you do, Jackson West is almost assuredly going to be the tight end that you complement Kyle Morlock with, because Jackson West's strength right now at this point in his development that's been hindered by numerous injuries for about a year and a half or so. But blocking is what he does well. He's got a good frame for it. He has the mentality for it, certainly. As a dude from Northern Alabama who doesn't have social media, so he just
respect. Yeah,
anything else to do other than just beat the crap out of people as a blocker, I guess. Also, I think a classically trained musician too. Interesting Jackson West. Yeah.
Okay. What instrument do you know? Like
the oboe.
Battle's End had interviewed him about.
I was going to say he has no social media, so you could make up any fun fact, like any Utopia fact about him, and I would have no idea.
He looks like a cello guy to me. What I like about Jackson West is that he ended last season, playing consistently. Kind of the reason why they were okay losing Marcus and Douglas. I know for you guys that was a toughie, but Jackson West was taking over Marcuson's snaps to some extent or another last year, and he had some pretty good performances as a run blocker late in the year, and he was good this spring. And so you're just talking about stacking practices consistently and decent showings consistently. I think there's some upside there, despite him being a fourth-year guy.
Yeah, and just to kind of point out the disparity, Clay said it. He had him 33, kind of carried by that run blocking grade. He had a 55.5 PFF overall grade, but 67.4 in the run blocking grade. If he can consistently block the runs that this team is going to get, I could look like a fool, which wouldn't be the first time. I don't know. We'll see on my list, man. There's just other guys who enamor me more with the talent, to where I probably should have put the positional importance of your second tight end with the type of offense we've run in the past couple of years higher. So I guess if he's in your top 44, I don't know. I'm pretty close. Either way,
it's close.
I'm close enough. I don't look like that big of an a-hole, but not more than any more. Let's talk about 34. Now, we were talking about swing offensive linemen. Importance with the offensive line. I do think that the backups to me are a little bit more important than backups at other positions, just because your offensive line gets dinged up all the time. So we're talking about redshirt sophomore offensive tackle Jaylen Early. This is a guy that I think has shown the most promise out of that group of young offensive linemen. And to be honest with you, this is an important one for the team's success. But it's also kind of an important one for combating narratives on the recruiting trail, as far as homegrown developed offensive linemen. Same way when we start talking about receivers. So to me, I had him ranked as the 29th most important player. I do think he's going to be your swing offensive lineman, your swing tackle. I think he'll be your main backup tackle. But he's going to be important on the field. I just think I want to get FSU a win that they can combat some of these crap recruiting narratives as well. So I find some very secondary importance on that. Zach said no, there's no importance to any of that. He didn't have him ranked. Adam had him at 34. Brendan's with me at 28. Kev's 30. Chris Nee 37. Clay also said we're bunch of big dumb idiots. He didn't have him ranked. Dane had him at 32. Adam, what do you think about Jaylen Early's game? I think we're all in consensus that he's your first tackle off the bench if one of your assumed starters get hurt. And if you agree with that, why do you think that?
Yeah, first, Clay is never allowed to send me video cut-ups and GIFs of, is it GIFs or GIFs? I never get that right.
I say GIFs, but I'm a dinosaur.
Okay. Yeah, so am I. He's never allowed to send me any of those about offensive lineman again because he didn't rank the backup tackle. He probably had Lucas Simmons ranked like 22 or something like that. So, yeah, I mean, I think that, Early's what? He's probably your swing offensive lineman right now if Robert Scott's unavailable. And I'm not going to rank Robert Scott and assume that he's a guy that can play for you this year. Like, I just
real quick,
go
AB,
ahead.
am I the only one to have ranked Robert Scott?
I didn't.
I don't think I did.
not. I couldn't
man.
do it. I couldn't do it, man. I can't bank on him playing snaps.
That's
It would be
the
amazing
one.
if he did. It would be amazing if he did, but
Yeah, so Brent, 41. Did you rank
Yeah,
him?
did you
at
I mean,
41?
it's green.
Yeah,
I
like a
clearly
lot.
did.
Yeah, that means you're the highest. So, that could be one where we look
Yeah.
back and if he could squeeze together, that's just we don't have. To
well,
go
I'll
into
say this
detail
then.
on
I
that,
find
but
it
that's an
interesting
one.
that you ranked Robert Scott 41 and still ranked Jaylen Early 28.
Hedging bets, baby. We're
I
hedging bets
don't
over here.
blame you for
Oh,
it.
now you're. That's why you get the analytics nerds like tag.
It was concerning for me earlier because he looked so thin when camp started. But from all my understanding is he kind of played better as camp went along.
Mhm.
And you've got an opportunity to put a little bit of weight back onto him. I'm sure that they probably aren't thrilled that he looked as thin as he did. And there is a plan for him to bulk up a little bit. Maybe that's just muscle wise and not necessarily, getting big and fat like some people think offensive linemen are. So there was a lot of encouraging. There was a lot of encouraging conversation for me from folks that I kind of trust to talk about the team and tell me things surrounding Jaylen Early as camp went along. And then I thought in the showcase he played fine. He had his moments. So I think if you are projecting him as your backup offensive tackle, potentially at right and left tackle, we'll see how that plays out. Then I just think it makes a lot of sense to kind of get him in your top 40 and specifically maybe in like a higher 30s, maybe even low 20s.
I think if Jaylen Early, and he did get better as spring went on, and it wasn't always great in the beginning, but I think he got better and talking to people around the program, maybe same here. It's like, I think they felt a lot better exiting the spring than they did going into it with his trajectory. And what happens because he's so good at pass pro, I'm just talking about like a pure, you put him one-on-one, like he's very natural at it. He's been really good at that at practice since middle of last season. He's been consistently good there. And if you just start applying that and adding other aspects of his game, he's potentially your backup at left tackle. And if something were to happen, if say Jeremiah Byers doesn't progress the way you need him to, or if Maurice Smith got hurt or something, you would then have the flexibility to move your most flexible, valuable, if you're drinking game at home, offensive lineman and Darius Washington somewhere else. And Jaylen Early kind of allows you to remember in 2016 when Rod Johnson finally was able to play and you're able to move Cam Irving. Similar kind of thought. It's like if he's ready, then that unlocks maybe your optimal lineup elsewhere, regardless of what that is. So that's why he's important to me.
I agree with Trey though. I ranked him partially at 34 because I'm like, Alex Atkins got to get a win here of he can develop a high school offensive lineman to be a player. Like it's a silly narrative, but
because they've developed like Darius Washington,
I know,
he developed Dimitri Manuel.
Like, these are not things that we necessarily believe. This is outside noise. Like that, there's importance there. That's not the main factor. It's always on field first, and I think we're going to talk about this more when we start to get to like the wide receivers and stuff, because you have felt that impact in the recruiting space, I would say. There's just it's all part of nebulous things that make everything important. Let's talk about our next most important guy.
Well, Bill pointed it out that the Jaylen Early was the player.
There's a lot of consensus here.
Closest, we were the closest on him of all the players we've talked about so far.
Except for the guys with similar haircuts. They said no, not ranking them. But once they get him, a dinosaur, dude. Those haircuts are cool. I wish I could do stuff like that.
Jackson West would have been the most similar if Trey didn't screw that up. Alas.
Touche.
Womp womp. Nerd alert. Me. All right, let's talk about not a nerd. That's Auburn. Linebacker transfer, Cam Riley.
NC State linebacker transfer.
NC State, yeah, I guess he did. Okay, Auburn, NC State, boom, in your face, Dorn. Redshirt junior, 6'5", 242. Every time I read that, I chuckle. He had a 66.6. Ooh, Evil. PFF grade last year, 32 tackles, 2.5 sacks. Zach had him at 23. Adam had him at 20. Brendan, 29. Kev not ranked. Chris, 39. Trey, 38. Dane, 40. Clay, 30. A little bit kind of variance all over the board. I like
over his film.
I liked his bankable skill set, dude. I thought he moved so much better in space, and that bankable skill set of being a guy who I thought was his film looked so much different than I thought when I read like all the height and weight statistics. He plays good in space and he's good in coverage. So I like having a known commodity. I don't know how many snaps he's going to get. I don't know if he's going to be like the third most used linebacker, the fourth most used, but he's got a defined role, and that's why I have him at 38. Kev, you watched the film with me. Why am I stupid? Why didn't you rank him? I like the way he covered people.
So I think Cam Riley, you're saying it. He's got a unique skill set. I think he moves really well in space. Sometimes he has trouble, facing up blockers when they kind of get around the edge, when they get to the second level. But you're banking on your defensive line to kind of keep them clean. I think he matches up well on tight ends. I think he's going to be a really useful guy for you to rotate in and out in the linebacker room, and a tool like a true Sam linebacker. What was their name for the hybrid linebacker that they thought Gainer was?
No.
Fox?
Stud backer.
Stud.
So I think he'll be a true stud backer. I think he'll get a lot of play, and I think he'll be an important player this year.
No, you don't. No, you don't. You don't think he's going to be that important at all. Why did you say that?
What if he only plays like? How often did they go with 3 linebackers last year?
Very rarely.
Do we expect him to do that more this year? Yeah, they didn't do it a lot last year, Brendan.
But they didn't have a stud.
They didn't,
and that sounds like they didn't have a star linebacker kind of deal. Who's that hybrid backer where you're trying to play a 4-3 versus a 4-2-5? Because they're the same thing. You just put in a corner body instead of a linebacker body.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they would do it. I'm trying to pull it up here and see if I can I feel like they would do it. They had DJ Lundy be the third linebacker, but it was always when it was they knew the box was going to be
Yeah, they did it against power packages.
Yeah, you're going to see it a lot against Notre Dame.
Florida 2 years ago when Florida was running a lot of 13 personnel.
If you beat Notre Dame, it's because Cam Riley helped you shut down some.
That seems like that'd be
you wish you could do this ranking over again, then from the things you're saying.
Yeah, I definitely miss Cam Riley. That was a mistake on my part.
All right, dude, I respect it. The brain starts to meld when you do this exercise.
There's so many names, and they just
that Google
and you mess up one, and you have to change the whole list. So that was a missed one on me. My bad, Cam Riley. 33, I think, is a little bit lower than you should be.
Oh, even higher. Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah,
I love it. But the aggregate,
that's
the aggregate makes it good in the.
They had my back. Coach AB had my back.
Adam, you got him at 20, man. You think he's going to be seeing the field a lot? Do you think that that's indicative of his talent or the type of teams that Florida State's going to face this year?
I think part of it's the teams they're going to face. I think they're going to see a bit more of a old school 3 tight end power packages, and in that role, they're going to get him on the field a little bit more. I also think he's your best coverage linebacker, and I think that that's important. I think he's a guy that you can find matchups for in the passing game throughout the season, and to me, I value that. So, as strictly a matchup player, I think that there's some significance there, and that's why I was aggressive with his ranking.
FSU was 16th nationally last year in 4-3 personnel usage at 11.3. Yeah, so 105 snaps, basically. It's not a ton.
Yeah, which is zilch, but nobody runs it anymore. Nobody does it. I mean, so it's
still one of the more in the country. But say you double that, right? And that's so you're talking about that's Cam Riley, probably the designated role, I would imagine, for the most part. And then that would be a guy who's got a very specific 200 or so snaps. Fairly important, I guess.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about a guy who's mildly more important than Cam Riley, according to all of us, as long as we got our rankings right.
Kev just deleted Cam Riley.
Oh, dude,
It's,
he's gonna.
it's continuing.
Oh, he really hates that
I hope
guy.
he doesn't see you on campus, brother. He's gonna whoop that ass. And he's 6'5", 242.
Yeah, he's a big dude.
Very large. 32, another large individual, 6'2", 193. That's the sophomore Quindarius Jones, a very talented, very interesting prospect. A little bit of differentiation here. Zach had him at 33. Adam 29. Brendan Clay just keeps typing "whoa" in the chat over and over and over again. It's awesome. His mind is just leaking out of his ears, blown. Brendan had him at 39. This one to me, Kev at 38 as being the Q guy. That status is in question, my friend. Christy had him 41st off the list. I had him the highest at 27. I think he's your first corner. I think he's like your main backup at cornerback. And Florida State rotates the crap out of DBs. And I'm higher on the talent than the parade bandwagon leader, Kev. That was a fake title. I've taken that from you.
Ooh,
Dane had him at 30. The numbers are the numbers. Clay had him at 31. Kev, you just spoke, but I'm going to let you speak one more time. That number of 38 does not match the hype level that you've justified to this man. And you've got me drinking. What this was, there was some Quindarius Kool-Aid in that little shaker cup right there. And I just guzzled it down. I feel like you've abandoned me. You left me on QAnon Island, and I don't like it.
You know, when you're like, my dad used to be my coach, right? And so
I don't know where you're going with this, dude, but I like it. Keep going.
But he had higher expectations of me. So
you're
he
tougher
was
on
always
the ones you love.
He was always tougher on me than he was on anybody else.
Clay, whoa, this is crazy.
So I'm proud of you guys for really sticking up, for really buying into the Quindarius hype. Yeah, he's a good ball player. I think he's going to be your cornerback 3. The reason why he's so low for me is because the replaceability factor. I think he is your third best outside corner, but I do think that some of these other guys, some of the young guys that are replacing him, some of his fellow second-year players, I don't think you're going to see a huge difference this year in between them and somewhat replaceable in a very deep cornerback room. So I tended to undervalue the cornerbacks as a whole.
Because of the talent of the room.
Right. So the way I was doing the thing was like my top 22 players, my cornerbacks ended up being, towards the back. And then for my second string, again, the cornerbacks ended up being towards the back of my second string is how I ranked it. But I do think he is your number 3 cornerback, and he's someone who's going to give you a lot of mileage this year.
Do we all think that? Do we all think that he's the number 3 cornerback?
As far as outside corner, yeah. Yes.
Outside, yeah. I'm with you, and that's kind of that's how important is defined. Like if Quindarius, if something happened to him, there's a lot of other guys that are talented in that room where it's like if something happened to like a Josh Farmer, where like the talent level may not, like in the production, may not match how important they are to this team. That's why I love this list, Brendan. I'm so glad you blatantly stole it from that Alabama writer and brought it to us, and we just perfected it. It was good. I'm glad you did that.
It was
because
in
this is a
network.
great list. I love it.
It was a network, to be fair.
I'm glad you're just a thief. I'm glad you're just a brutal thief. Dirty 31. All right, let's get to 31. This is the one. It's backup. I feel like it's backup quarterback time, and you always put it around 31. He could either be not ranked or he could be number 1, depending on what happens on the season. And I think that this is an interesting one for your backup quarterback. Obviously, we're talking about redshirt freshman Brock Glenn at 31, our last name on the list tonight. I think this is different than like my Tate Rodemaker thing last year, where I don't know what I ranked him, but it was the customary spot for the backup quarterback. I'm high on Brock Glenn's talent. This wasn't just him being the backup quarterback that had him at 31 for me. I think he's a really talented guy, and I like the progression that I saw from him being thrown into the the worst pressure cooker scenarios that like a freshman quarterback could be. So I actually did have him at 31. So nice for me. I had him at 31. Dane had him at 26. Clay unranked. And which is interesting because your starting quarterback is very durable. So I could kind of get the low ranking on the backup quarterback too. Chrisney agrees. He had him at 45. Kev had him at 25. Brendan had him at 24. Adam at 36. Zach 38. Brendan, I'm gonna let you talk about what have you seen out of Brock Glenn at the start of spring? Like, it was a legitimate quarterback competition. It still technically kind of is, even though we all think that DJ is going to be the guy. I mean, what have you seen out of him? Where has he grown the most over this spring? And how worried would you be if something did? I don't even want to talk about it. It did happen to DJ.
Yeah, we did kind of learn firsthand, unfortunately, how important that backup quarterback position is, and just even the national narratives and perceptions that kind of stemmed around it too after Jordan Travis's injury. Like, so it is an important position and one that I will always probably have in like the 20ish range. It's always going to be really, really, really valuable to have a backup quarterback that you can trust. I would feel like I loved what I saw from Brock Glenn in practice throughout last season and even the spring. Like, he is comfortable ripping it and had a lot of what's the word that we like to use for Brock?
You
Moxie.
like to use moxie. You're the purveyor of moxie.
I mean,
you push moxie hard.
He's got moxie. He does have moxie. That moxie was tested at times last season, no doubt. No doubt. It was an awful situation that made the moxie move in all sorts of ways that you don't want it to, and that's okay. You learn from those opportunities, and I thought, he presented this spring I like that his athleticism was more profound, and we saw it like at times even against Louisville before he ended up hurting his leg in that game. Something that people really don't talk about is he ended up hurting his leg I think before halftime in that game, but his athleticism was well on display multiple times, throughout the spring. And I thought that was something that we knew had an element of it to his game, but it was more pronounced, and it wasn't panic scrambles or stuff like that. It was good decisions and
controlled.
It stood out. I thought that some of the decision making wasn't as sharp as I would have liked it to be. I thought it was better at times last year, and so something that. But again, he ended up getting hurt before the end of the spring, so we didn't get to see a full practice, spring practice for him either. But yeah, I feel like Brock Glenn will, when he plays, whether it's in backup garbage time or if something does happen at DJU, he is durable, but he also missed a little bit of time last year at Oregon State. I think the backup quarterback there played 100 snaps or so. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah, a little bit. There's sometimes in games where he had to leave. Nothing crazy though. There'll be times when I think Brock Glenn plays, and when that does happen, I think you'll see more of a mastery of the offense than what you saw last year when he was a true freshman, just trying to kind of keep afloat there. I think they liked what they saw from him in the spring, but I think we go into the summer. Pretty much everyone knows it's going to be DJU at this point to start the year. That's who you're building your offense around. I think Brock getting hurt in the spring kind of ended things as DJU was ascending, but still a valuable player to have in the fold because he has gotten better, and there's something you can do to build your offense around him too, I think, with the mobility.
Well said, Brennan. It elicited Clay Fink's 394th whoa of the chat. I think that's where we leave it tonight. That is it, guys. We hit the honorable mentions. The honorable mentions, we're up to number 31. Only 30 players left on this list. We can't wait to have you guys back. We love this. Give your feedback in the comments of the YouTube. Give your comment in the feedback to the Noles 24/7 board. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Who's wrong? Who's right?
Trey, we have a bit of breaking news.
Seriously?
Just broke at Noles 24/7 right now. 1 week only, a 60% off annual subscription to Noles 24/7.
That's right, 60% off Noles247.com. It elicits another whoa from Clay Fink. Guys, listen, that is a great point. This is high quality handmade analysis we're talking here. And the fact that you people could get it for pennies on the dollar, listen, if you don't take up that deal, then I'll never respect you. I'll never. And I know that my respect is something that means a lot to you. So quit lurking. Quit waiting for that stuff to hit Twitter, because it's not gonna anymore. Because we've got our ship tightened up. No more leaks. You're not gonna get those random screenshots and Discords anymore. If you want the handmade, high quality black tar college football recruiting news and analysis, you need to go to Noles247.com and you need to be a subscriber, because you're going to get entertainment like this. You'll get better entertainment hosted by somebody else, and you'll get the best news, recruiting analysis, football analysis anywhere at all. Somebody said I just look like Kirk Herbstreit.
And
That makes
fighting words right there.
Damn. I mean, damn. What more
Whoa,
could be said?
whoa.
Listen.
Holy Kev.
Guys, go to Noles247.com. Like, subscribe. Clickbait just won't stop saying whoa. This has been a night for the ages. We're going to be back with you every single Tuesday night, and I think we're going to be going live every single time. So join us on YouTube if you're listening right now on the Bench audio podcast feed. Despite what people said about my face, I'm in a very small box at the bottom. Come look at the other guys that we're going to have. It'll always be, we're going to have a rotating cast of characters, and we're going to go through this list, and you will be so informed on the state and the importance of Florida State's roster for the 2024 season. I can't wait to have you. For Brendan, for Kevin, for Adam, I'm Trey Rowland. Keep chopping, and we're going to see you next week. Subscribe to Noles 24/7. Love you guys.
Whoa.
Whoa, dude.